Hey, this is Zach from Burnout Marketers, and today's episode is brought to you by Product Marketing Alliance, your go-to community for leveling up your product marketing career. PMA's Product Marketing Summits offer an incredible chance to connect with fellow PMMs, hear from industry leaders at companies like Google, Uber, and TikTok, and take your career to the next level. Want to see when a summit is coming to a city near you? Head on over to world.productmarketingalliance.com and don't forget to use the code NOTMARKETERS15. I repeat, NOTMARKETERS15 for 15% off your next ticket. Follow them on LinkedIn at Product Marketing Alliance.
We are a podcast for product marketers and B2B SaaS who feel misunderstood of what they do.
From someone who truly gets what you do and
basically help you feel less like a misfit, being unignorable in your role.
What's up? It's your boys at We're Not Marketers. Got another episode for season 3. And we're going to bitch a little on this one because I like to bitch sometimes, and they finally agreed to let me. So I think it is no secret that product marketers deal with a whole bunch of stuff at work. And as I'm getting to know more and more of them, like in my personal friend group, I'm getting to unpack their personal lives a little bit. And it blows me away how all of us are able to manage getting to work, putting at least 40 hours in of chaos, getting off, dealing with our partners, making sure their love tank is filled, and then somehow having time for all of us to figure out our own personal joys. I know I have a kid now, as over the last 8 months. You both also have very colorful lives outside of your work days. So I think it was due that we have a little conversation about how the hell do we deal with all of this without our heads exploding.
Yeah, that's a really good take. And I think there's 2 avenues we can explore here. One avenue of being like an in-house product marketer and managing that chaos today. And the second one is being a fractional product marketer where each day is not guaranteed. And in addition to your in-house client work, you're taking on other responsibilities to manage and grow the business. So I'm curious, like, which route do we want to go, y'all?
Well, we're going to have to tap into both because we know both listen in. I think if we're going to start, I think the more hectic one is potentially the fractional because they're trying to get their own clients as opposed to just securing the one client to give them a full-time job.
I'm open to that.
Yeah, I think it's a good one. And I don't know which of the two is more stressful, I would say. But if I just take my last 6 months as full-time with my own stuff, yes, it's stressful. You don't know when you're going to get paid. You have to juggle lots of stuff. You're not just a consultant, you're doing everything yourself. But when I compare my level of joy of doing that with being a PMM in an enterprise for 6 to 8 months, I definitely feel happier doing it for my own stuff. Because if you work with a client and the client sucks, up to a point you're like, okay, we need to break up because it's just not manageable for me. It's just too complicated. Then you can just fire the client, right? You can just fire yourself versus having all of your source of income coming from one place that might potentially lay you out. I feel like it's a different struggle, and you're more scared of your opinion and what you think in-house versus being fractional that, hey, I'm seeing this 12 times over the last year. This is how you should act.
And this is not to say, like, and one thing I want to caveat too as well is not to disparage like working in-house. I think there are pros and cons for each one. I think one challenge, again, just to pivot back to in-house, is that depending on who your manager is, the ability to say no to requests that might not align to the end goal. And I've seen this on LinkedIn where it's like I've seen PMMs talk about like, hey, I have a really great manager that empowers me and allows me to say no to requests as long as if it doesn't align to our end goal, or figure out ways to reprioritize. I think where it gets hard is that when you are forced or you feel pressured to taking on every request out of job security.
You want to show the value of being a product marketing manager so much, yet you don't want to be seen as someone who doesn't want to put the work. The issue is you are taking way too much work, and that work isn't linked to milestone of success. Or I think you said it, Zach, in prior episode, marketable moment a little bit. Like, hey, I'm able to feed the loop, I'm able to bring results, I'm able to do that, instead of, yeah, I was not really able to work on revenue because I just been feeding sales a couple of one pager or sales deck or whatever. But I think it's also a question of, you said it yourself, learn how to say no. Shout out to Natalie Marcotulio. She did a pitch in front of us at Drive on like learning how to say no. And I feel like if PMMs can follow up that framework, jot it down, try to understand if this is going to come up later and if it's actually related to the broader strategy. Otherwise, you can always have that covered later in a one-on-one instead of always jumping the gun on making sure it's done correctly.
And to quickly recap, her 3 takeaways was: 1, ask why; 2, figure out how to reprioritize, like where it sits in priority; and 3, if all things fail, so hey, let's experiment with it, let's test it out. But Eric, I cut you off.
You forgot the ground zero step.
How did I forget from ground zero?
Oh, ground zero is the most important. Compliment their idea.
Oh my gosh.
Empathy 101.
Look at me being the asshole over here.
Yeah.
I think
that, first you say that's a great idea.
That's why I've ruffled feathers in the past.
That's why you're the CFO, right? You're like, we don't have the budget, guys. Come on. So yeah, I love it.
Nicety is an expense.
You're throwing away those compliments as much as possible.
Nicety is an expense. Write that off.
Exactly.
So I'm going to give a perspective because I'm a fractional, but I have one client and I work full-time hours, right? One thing that I've really helped me find more balance, right? More structure, more time for my family, for sure. More time for myself is I work 40 hours, right? That's basically my contractual agreement. Instead of when you're on a salary situation, you can essentially work your hours. And to be honest with you, I was not working my 40 hours for the first 4 or 5 months. I was definitely acting as if I was still in a full-time salaried role where all that matters is getting the work done. Doesn't matter about, all that stuff. And yeah, 3 months ago, I made a very conscious decision that what are you doing? You should be working the hours that you're supposed to be working. You're supposed to then, when you cut that off, get off work. So I've even recently taken off Slack, or now off my phone as of last week, because I felt like even when I'm with my fiance and my son, I'm checking those things at a county fair on the middle of a Saturday. My recommendation on whether you are on the in-house side, which is awesome, or whether you're over on the fractional side, which I'm finding is to also be pretty freaking awesome. The number one thing that I would say is you have to maintain a healthy relationship between you and work. Sometimes that may mean just calling it quits at a certain time, putting in your schedule, letting everyone that you work with what your situation is. But it could also be when we talked to Megan earlier this season, going to therapy and talking about your potentially unhealthy relationship with your work. And I know there's going to be a lot of varying degrees in there, but that's what's changed me over the last 3 months in particular, and how I approach product marketing.
What,
I love.
dude? Like really quick.
Go ahead, Zach. I
Oh,
just
no, go
want
first.
the tip about deleting Slack from your smartphone.
You want to hear
Such
something?
like what
You
I
want to hear
do-
something hilarious, real quick? Didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I literally have mental memory, okay, of where Slack was. Now Google Maps is there. I've clicked on Google Maps like 7 times because my brain is conditioned to go check that space, to go check for the information that appears in that space, and it was taking over my life without even knowing it.
I know you don't use Google Map. You told us you use Apple Map, and I'm still shell shocked from that news.
Well, until he
Yeah,
goes to Iceland and he
you-
tries to use Apple Maps to get around.
Oh, good luck, Eric.
You guys hear news? Product marketer ends up in iceberg, frozen solid.
Exactly.
Apple Maps, last known app used on his phone.
Exactly. Not Slack. You were about to say something, Zach, before I said that deleting Slack should be the way of practicing mindfulness a little bit.
What I'm going to say next is like, this comes from all the care in the world, but it's like, what's really tough about when we say advice like this is that it's practical, but there is a reality for many of us that it's not realistic, or it doesn't feel realistic. Hey, slack off of your phone. Like, I think it's easier for me to do that because it's like, or like for 3 of us, because although we are like in a fractional, we are not contractually obligated to respond to messages. But if you're an in-house employee, there might be that implicit pressure of like, well, if we are paying or subsidizing your phone bill, then you should have Slack. You should have these messages on your phone because we are subsidizing that. Even if they're not subsidizing that, there is that internalized pressure that I've heard from some PMMs where it's like, hey, if I don't respond within an hour, my manager or direct report or colleague is like, what is going, it is like this perception on you. So I feel like it feeds into like this always on mentality where we convince ourselves that this mentality supports our current lifestyle. And if we turn off, then our wealth might turn off too. So that's what I'm saying here too, because like I definitely agree with you guys, but there is something there where it's not that easy to like write out your feelings, because I think for some of us, we're pretty afraid to see what's gonna come out. Because if we,
Exactly.
if you put that out on paper, you'd be like, I gotta quit my job.
Well, it's FOMO, right? Like that's why we keep checking our phone. Oh, maybe I'll see something. Maybe I'll check it out. But I agree with what you said. But I feel like things are changing, right?
Not quick enough. Maybe in Canada, but I don't think here.
No, but not in Canada, okay? But I have 2 examples. There's Australia and Portugal. Those 2 countries, if your employers is reaching you out after the work hours, you can sue them 100%. Now, I don't know exactly the details, but I know that those countries, if like my boss, which is me, is sending me a message after the work hour and is trying to call you or to reach you out, you can say, hey, legally you can do that. So I feel like there are some laws that are getting there, and we can blame remote work. We can blame always being on a little bit, but this is very detrimental for mental health. And we're seeing those medical leaves and psychological problems increase.
I'm going to be, because like,
can I?
Oh,
can
go
I
for
jump?
it.
I agree. I think you really opened that up, and I like where this conversation is going. This is going to be one of those dope episodes. I can already tell. Zach, I think you're right. Like, how many people are going to listen to this episode and say exactly what you said? Like, Eric, easier said than done, right? 100% right. I have been in tech now for basically my 3-year anniversary was last month. I have had Slack on my phone until last week. That is because of exactly what you said. I have felt an inherent pressure that I'm putting on myself. No one has ever put that pressure on me. I've put that on myself for the last 3 years. I would challenge everyone who's listening to me right now to ask yourself that question. is this pressure something that I'm applying to myself? Or are there colleagues who are actually being like, yeah, you should be more on top of your messages. You should have Slack on your phone. If you're in a situation that's so unhealthy where you've got anyone, I don't care if it's the engineer that doesn't send you any message other than how you're not on Slack. But if you're in that situation where you're getting internal pressure from your organization, that I don't have an answer for.
Yeah.
I'll just be blunt.
Yeah.
But I do have an answer for the people who say, you know what, I'm putting this on myself. Like, this is all my own self-induced anxieties that I will say will go away with that click of a button, or maybe that double click, that hold, hit the X in the corner on your app. That will change it. And you'll realize within the first week, like, it's not changing what's happening at work. Okay. And I also want to caveat this. I was in a very fortunate situation where I've got Cody Bernard, shout out Cody, director at Clue. And when he came in, he actually made a comment like his third week. He's like, yeah, I don't have Slack on my phone. I never do. And so for the last 7 months, I've had that thought in my head of like, oh, he doesn't do it. And it's working out beautifully for him for 7 months. So I got to jump out of the airplane with a parachute, knowing the exact situation I'm in. Someone who's got a little bit or a lot more responsibility than me is managing his work, not on his phone. I can do it too. And I would also encourage anyone who feels that way, like, you hit that button, try it for a week. Let me know how it goes, because it feels so good.
And so I think to that example, what's really helpful about that is that, Eric, you have a leader that set the tone of like, this is my relationship with work. This is not my expectation for you, but I'm telling you, this is my relationship to work. I think what was hard, like, I can give 2 examples, is that one is that if I am back in the day, if I were to say, oh, I don't have Slack on my phone, they're like, well, what? Like, how come? It might be a negative reflection. And then the second one is that a lot of workplaces I feel today in the US, I'm going to speak for the US, within tech in the US, they're not equipped to handle conversations around mental health. They are not equipped. Right now, mental health is today seen as a corporate benefit, not like a required benefit. It's one of those things that when they're looking to recruit someone, they're like, oh, we give you free headspace, or you get free talk space. When the rubber hits the road, I can speak from personal experience. When I came to a leader and I was just like, right now, I am struggling. Things are hard. I go to bed and I feel this weight on my chest. And I want to figure out, what can we do? Well, you can take medical leave. And it was not because, again, that is an avenue. That's like legal of it. But the way the response, it felt so callous. And it felt like, that's a you problem. That's not us. So it's like this catch-22. It's like, take care of your mental health. But heaven forbid, if you take the steps to set that boundary, your job might be at risk too. So I think that's another hard reality that I think about as we're having this conversation today.
It's making me mad that the answer that you got was you can take medical leave. As if it's like one of the most accessible options. It should be the last thing. Like, you should be forced to go on medical leave. Well, you were proactive enough to come up and be, hey, it's not going well, I need this. And having like an employer that you feel like they care about you. And I have a bunch of things to say on what you both have said. The first thing is, I'm fortunate enough of working with a client that we're working together, and it's a mental health platform for the US. And the goal is to, and again, I'm still working through the messaging, but the goal is make mental health more than a line item. Because this is a lot how it's perceived right now. It's like, oh yeah, you have dental, you have vision, you have like 5 or 10 sessions with a therapist, and then you have to pay for yourself. As we know, mental health is a long time journey. So, fortunate enough of working with that client, very happy about the work we're doing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think it's very, very important to have beginning and end of work ritual, especially in-house, just as PMMs, because we're always context switching. We're always trying to make things work. So, for example, when I begin the day, I put my standing desk in standing mode. I make myself a coffee, and I just put like a specific set of song or like a playlist on Spotify, like happy beats or whatever, and I just enjoy my coffee with nothing open on my computer for like the first 2, 5, 10 minutes of my day, just to make myself in like work mode, and then I start working. But when I end my workday, I do something very similar. I put it down, and I'm not standing all day. Don't worry. But I put it down. I close my computer. I told you guys in Vermont, I have a bit of an OCD, so I make sure there's nothing on my desk. That everything is kind of symmetric a little bit, and I just kind of say like, now end of work day or something. It doesn't need to be that, but finding a signal, a visual or verbal signal that is telling you it's the end of the work day and I'm not checking work anymore.
No.
So that's one of my
Yeah.
tip. And the last thing, very much related to the Slack thing, try it for 1 week, as Eric said, but also when you take a look at your overall scope of work, maybe you're in a 90-day situation as a first PMM or a solo PMM, or you're trying to have a kick-ass impact on your role. Do you think that being, oh, this person was very responsive on their Slack message, do you think that would save you from like layoffs, or that would sounds great on like your like performance review? Not really, right? Yes, being responsive is something, but people would rather you being 100% ready to jump on the call during the work hour than being the person that will say, oh yes, I'll check it out tomorrow past 5 p.m.
Gab, I want to mention, give you a shout out on that, is that especially with working from home, having that physical separation from your job is really hard. So that ritual of saying like, my workday is over, that small step makes a huge difference. Or just having a designated area where you work, because that signals to your mind, this is where I come here for work. When I'm done, I don't come back here too. So I got to give you a call out for that. That's really good. That ain't OCD. That's best practice right there.
Exactly. And it's just a very simple task, right? It's a very simple signal, like closing the curtains or moving things in a certain way. And I'm like, okay, yeah. Like, for example, me, what I'm doing, because I'm in my full-time solopreneurship, I have like a moment when I stop working from this hour to this hour, and then I just do like back office task in the evening. But even in the evening, I still have that ritual of like, oh, I'm preparing my clothes for tomorrow, and then if it's on the chair, I cannot sit, so I cannot work. But best case situation is very much I'm working X hour to X hour. The rest can wait tomorrow, and also just being more mindful that your to-do list is not something that you should like beat yourself up if it's not completely done at the end of the day. It's a to-do list. The goal is just to gauge your task, gauge your priority, and get to it.
Oh, Eric, go ahead.
I was just gonna pack on really quickly. And we're doing quarterly planning right now. It's so hard to quantify how much time it's going to take to do something.
It is, yeah.
Like, it is not just like, oh, write a blog post. Okay, like I know that's going to take me anywhere between 2 and 4 hours, maybe less, right? But when it comes to like writing positioning, I don't know. I got to research. I got to put pen to paper. I got to get everyone in the company to shit on it, and then I got to come back and revise it. So I think a lot of times we just can't time manage the way we want to, because a lot of times we don't know how long it's going to take to do certain things, even though we think we do, right? And even if we cut off Slack and we have no one interrupting us, I think honestly that's tough to do. And Zach, I don't want to. You had a thought. I kind of wanted to touch back on something you said.
Go for it.
Well, so you made the comment, and it was basically like not feeling comfortable working a certain amount of hours, right? And feeling like work is kind of always on. And I've actually, again, over this last 3 months or so, I've seen my productivity increase dramatically because I'm not just staring at a screen with like an empty thought process for 10, 20, 30 minutes at a time or whatever. Like actually, I don't know, having more intention to take breaks as well. So I can't remember which research study it was, but long story short, they tested high performing athletes, musicians, mathematicians, high elite level people. The max that they could produce high results was 90 minutes at a time. After that 90 minutes, they started to decline in both performance, cognitive function, all that stuff. And so I think a lot of times what we end up doing is thinking we've got, 8 hours to do something. So we're trying to work for 8 hours and we haven't given ourselves those 30-minute breaks or 10-minute breaks here and there, take our dog for a walk, go rollerblading, get some sun. And we're actually less productive, I think. I know there's some other studies on like not doing a 40-hour work week or 4-day work week, whatever the study is, and that it does show a higher level of productivity. So I think maybe this is biased, but I think our work is very cognitive. There's a lot of context switching. There's a lot of people asking a lot of things from us that have nothing to do with the task that we're focused on, coming in and distracting us throughout the day. I think it's something to do with spend some more time really chomping at the bit at a certain project, make some really good damage in it in a 90-minute interval, give yourself some grace, take a break, and then also try to figure out how to keep out those external forces. Slack is so bad for me. Slack pings in the corner of my computer screen, and I'm like, squirrel. And then, of course, my focus is gone for what I was just doing.
That's the thing. Like, it's like scratching a part of my brain that I need to take a look, and then it's like Slack tips or a thread or something. Yeah.
And another data point, because I don't normally just throw out facts. That's a you guys thing. It takes 7 minutes to get back to the same level of focus you were at when you were interrupted, and that's a bare minimum. So if like the doorbell rings and I'm working on messaging, I now need at least 7 minutes to get back to that level of flow, the flow state. And so, yeah, I just think there's a lot of things we can do to relieve pressure to maximize our productivity. And then, boom, like give yourself that hard stop. Make sure you're working in a space that, you can identify as your office or something of that nature. And then, of course, take care of your mental health. Don't let anyone own that relationship. That's yours to own, and make sure that you work with the right people or don't work with them at all. That's my hot take.
I want to get Zach tips on this because I think you told us at the point you said my best productivity app is airplane mode or something.
Oh yeah,
or
do not disturb.
Yeah, or do not disturb.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Don't look for a hack. Just use that. And like just a quick tip before that is when you have multiple screens or multiple tabs and you have to do one task and one task only, my tip is either just take your laptop, remove yourself from different monitors, and use F1 because it just full screen that main tab. So you use F1, you only have one view, you don't have the rest of your tabs, and you can just focus on exactly that.
Yes. And on the other side of the note is that you can work a number of hours in a day, but the work will never go away. So, like, being able to set boundaries for yourself and communicating with your manager, hey, this is what I need. And if your manager can do, I'm not saying this as lip service, that might be time where you might need to reevaluate your employment. Because just to come back full circle to the story I shared is that when I shared that piece with my then manager that he was working with, she said, "Oh, you can take medical leave." A few weeks later, here's a 48-hour notice. Because I came to a place for me that I was like, hey, it was either my health or the job. And I was like, you guys can keep the job. I want to preserve my health. And it was easy for me to say that too. Caveat being is that I don't have kids. I'm an independent. I live with society. That's an easier decision to make. But even then, consideration, think about at the end of the day, it says like, who do you want to come back home to? Like, who are the people that are most excited to see you when they come back home? Like, nobody wants to see you depleted of your energy, withdrawn. Like, your loved ones wouldn't want to see that. But like, if push comes to shove, reevaluate the job.
I love the way you're putting it. And you did a post this week, and there's a sentence that really resonated with me, and it's health is your wealth.
Yes.
And it's so true. You know, it has a lot of impact. And what you said is, I love it too. When you come back home, who is happy to see you? For example, I work from home, so my dog is always happy to see me, but animals, they will still understand your
Yes.
emotions. So if you're going home and they are happy to see you, but you're depressed, your mind is off work, you'll see the behavior of the animal. Yes. Okay, well, if it's impacting like the well-being of animals and people around me, there's something I should
exactly.
do.
Well, guys, thanks for letting me bitch for another episode of We're Not Marketers.
See you guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to We're Not Marketers. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, review our podcast, and share this episode with other PMMs. Thanks again, and see you soon.